What is up, everybody? My name is BobaTalks and welcome to my Westworld Season 2 Episode 1 top moments slash breakdown slash review. I guess you could consider me reviewing it because I will be giving my opinion on it when I'm talking about these top moments. But yes, guys, I'm so happy Westworld is back. It is, in my opinion, one of the best TV shows. So much has been set up in this episode already. I am already so happy with this episode in general. But let's get straight into what my favorite moments were and why. So these numbers aren't in any particular order for me. It's not like, oh yeah, number 1 is my favorite. I'm just going to go from number 1, and there's a few. So number 1 is Bernard. But at the very beginning, Arnold. We saw him 30 years ago talking to Dolores, around 30 years ago, I believe. But this was the Arnold version of him, to anyone who got confused about that. But it just set up the story that we have this season with Dolores being something that, well, people should be afraid of, because we saw Arnold just basically talking to Dolores saying, you basically scare me. And she was just like, what? I mean, it's like, you more just scare me for what you might become in terms of what he's created along with Ford, especially with Arnold's, ambitions and how he wanted them to basically have consciousness. We already know the backstory, behind it with his son and everything. That could be very, very dangerous in a very kind of Terminator-y way. I'm going to go on to the Bernard stuff now because, same kind of similar stuff. We had, him waking up on the edge of that beach, and this is what I love about this episode as well. We're getting a lot of kind of timey-wimey stuff, which was very popular in Westworld Season 1. Obviously, if you're a Westworld fan and you watch Season 1 and you're watching this video, I assume you know all about the fact that Westworld has the multiple timelines kind of thing going on. From one scene to the other often, well, not quite this episode, it kind of surrounded Bernard, really. But yeah, mainly the time slippage was happening with Bernard in this episode, and you just couldn't really tell all the time, is this present? And that's what I believe the beginning of the episode was. And then there was some of the stuff in the past with Ford's kind of retirement party, and then I believe at the end, where we saw the whole lake stuff, that was the future, but I'll get to that. But anyway, we see Gustav Skarsgård, who's actually from Vikings, and I love that show with a passion, and I love him. He plays Floki, and it was really weird seeing him play a different role like this. I'm so happy that he's on Westworld. I think we're gonna have a lot of things to look forward to with him. He seems to be quite this military kind of person they've brought in because of all the stuff that has gone down. We overheard him say things like there's been search and rescue teams at other parks, and since, communication has been down for the past couple of weeks since the mutinism began with, everything that happened at the end of last season. Things are just blowing up now. We also saw this really, really cool moment that I liked on the beach shore where we saw the Indians, and we got this new character, I believe called Antoine, who's this tech expert, and he was basically opening the head of one of the hosts, and then that's when they saw the maze and they were like, what is that all about? But then they took the core out of the head of the host, and as I said, I just love the design and the detail, not only like within the show's world that goes into the host, but also just the fact, the show is pulling off all of this stuff. I think it's incredible. But with taking out the host's core out of his brain, if you will, that is when they found out what actually happened on this beach, and that gave us the reveal or our first look at Dolores in this episode. And now this is where I spotted something very interesting, and you probably did too, about the Valley Beyond, because Dolores said something along the lines of not all of us get to make it or get to go to the Valley Beyond, and we saw a couple more references to that throughout this episode, and I'm sure that phrase amongst hosts will be quite a thing this season. Now, before I move on to number 2, this kind of goes in hand with Bernard, and it also goes into what I said earlier with the timeline trippy stuff that is going on and will continue to go on in Westworld, is when we got transported back to the night of the party of where Ford, got shot by Dolores. We saw Bernard and the board members hiding in that stable. Now, in this episode with all of this stuff, there is a lot of irony or like poetic justice, because now the hosts are acting like what the guests, or not all guests but some guests, or a lot of guests at some point, I'm sure, do when they enter the park. Some people go out and do horrible things to hosts. So when they were using one of the board members or the people invited to that party as target practice, I have to admit that kind of did make me feel a bit good for the host side. I mean, I know that was horrible, she is a human after all, but do you know what I mean? These hosts are now kind of getting their revenge, and I can't really admit that I feel too bad. But Bernard did say to Charlotte, I believe, that the majority of the hosts at this party must have been programmed from Ford to recognize all of the guests as hosts as well. So they're just messing around, and it doesn't matter, and no consequences when it comes to hosts on hosts. Now, due to these absolutely terrified board members in the stable, we saw the stable hand come in, and this is another reference to the Valley Beyond. As he approached the board members, and I felt sorry for this guy because he was just a regular host who posed no threat, but they were just being so paranoid that they didn't want to take the chance. You folks aiming to saddle up, ride through the green pastures of the Valley Beyond. Now, I personally think that the Valley Beyond is like a symbolism or a phrase for the host's meaning of the real world, like our world. And I think that this is going to keep popping up in terms of now all the hosts are rebelling, basically. They are talking about their journey into the real world, the Valley Beyond. Dolores said it, now the stable said it, this host said it, so I think it is going throughout all the hosts, but we're gonna have to wait and see more on that. But either way, I know that was a long number one, but I loved all that beginning bit with Bernard, well, Arnold, Bernard, and then a flashback to the party Bernard, and then it's just very timey-wimey with Bernard in this episode, and it's only gonna get worse, but in a good way. Now, number two for me is the real Dolores. Absolutely badass Dolores. I love her. I loved her so much this episode, and in this season she is going to be amazing. It's just, I know she was going very, very dark, but it's just understanding why and where she's coming from with all of this, because obviously in this episode, the first time we properly saw her beyond that recording from the Indian host is when she was actually, I assume these are either board members or guests. Now, regardless of the two, they probably have some involvement with the park, right, because they came for Ford's party, and Dolores was basically getting her revenge, or her initial revenge on these guys in a very, very brutal way. Now that Dolores is, you know, completely aware of everything, all of her previous lives, she remembers everything. I love that opening line, I believe it was, like, do you know where you are? You're in a dream. You're in my dream. And that is just a beautiful play on what Ford, Bernard, or Arnold, you know, would say to Dolores, or even probably other hosts when they were like in repair or something like that, or in the separate interviews, just like at the beginning of the episode with Arnold and Dolores. So with Dolores now fully awake after having no dreams of her own for years, you know, hell to hell of your making, and, you know, just addressing the board members as she was saying all of this, as if, you know, she's putting the complete blame upon them. And to be honest, I completely understand where she's coming from, because if you think about it, now she's got access to every kind of memory wipe, every repair, quote unquote death, if you will, that she's had through, you know, like horrible, you know, guests coming in and abusing her in you know, more ways than one than just death. Very horrible and abysmal ways you could possibly imagine. I'm sure she probably had many you know, lives where she, you know, she did just drop the can and then somebody picked it up and they had a nice time out. But, you know, there's some people messed up out there, rich enough to go to this place and then, you know, just kill people. I loved when she asked them, you know, what are your drives? And then they were like, you know, oh, please don't kill me. And then she was like, survival. Oh, you know, survival. It's your only cornerstone, but that's not only it, is it? It's to hurt, kill. That's why you created us, this place, to be prisoners to your own desires. Yet the irony of all of this is, you know, Dolores ends it, but now you're prisoner to mine. And obviously this is just adding on everything I've just said about this Dolores scene. I just thought it was brilliant. And I just love how, you know, the hosts have now swapped with the guests more or less, and they are needing a lesson, you know, because of the way they've treated them. I feel like everything in this show, it's thought of so intelligently. Like that last line she finished off on, you know, all of these roles were forced upon her, but now she gets to play her one last role, her only role, which is herself. Now, number three for me is kind of the scene surrounding the park headquarters, and of course Maeve kicking ass, and it all kind of began with Lee, the guy who was in charge of all, you know, all the narratives. He was about to get eaten alive by one of the hosts, which was hilarious, but Maeve managed to stop him, and he kind of wanted, you know, in a kind of very Weasley way, to prove himself useful to her. But just as predicted, I remember this happening. The first second of, you know, any kind of freedom for him, he would turn on her. And when those guys came in, that squad with guns, instantly hinting that she was a host, you know, just dressed up as a human in normal clothes. And that was really interesting to see as well, Maeve dressing up and acting all human. I'm looking forward to seeing more of that, because I'm sure we will see more of that. But I also love how baffled he was when he said, like, you're looking for your old kid, but how can you even access, you know, your old memories and stuff? So he was just like, wait, what? Like, he was kind of just comprehending what could actually be happening here with these hosts. How is this possible? She is, for all intents and purposes, a real kind of person now with, you know, access to memory, and you know how it is. I nearly forgot to mention the penis joke, which was just hilarious, because that was the line that Lee wrote for her. That was just brilliant. But also the moment when she made him get naked as well, that was very, I feel like, interesting at the same time, because she wanted him to get fully naked, and I feel like that was kind of her way of being satisfied. No, not in the way you'd think, but you know, because how hosts are made to be completely naked, he wanted to just get changed in his boxes, you know, and put the other clothes back on. But she was like, nope, all the way. And I honestly feel like that's because, you know, hosts are made to be completely naked, and I feel like she was just trying to turn it the other way around on the humans. And I feel like that is what is going on a lot in this episode. Just like with what I spoke about with Dolores, it's like the roles have reversed, and it's like, how do you like this? Now, number 4 for me, obviously, is the man in black is effing back. Like, I love William, like older William. Like, he couldn't be happier with the park now. He couldn't be happy. This is the park he's always wanted. We're going to have some fun now, and then, you know, after the battle with the 2 hosts that he had, for William, or the man in black, or MIB as I refer to, it's just, you know, he needs a park with consequences, and that, I feel like, with everything before, it was fascinating to him, of course, when he first came to the park as William. But I think the fact, you know, it's all completely fake, you know, at that point in time, and it's always got to go the same way, the same narrative and stuff like that, but now things matter. So after going to the park for so many years and years and years, and after all, he is the majority shareholder now, I think this is just heaven for him. And how could I forget the scene between William, or the man in black, sorry, I guess I should reference this version as the man in black, and a young Robert Ford. That was very, very interesting. And with this line, I found it very interesting as well. It kind of goes back to when the man in black was asking about the maze. That kind of, he's always striving for something, and that little host girl said, this game, this isn't meant for you. Now young Ford says, now this game is meant for you. Now the young Ford also said to the man in black, this game begins where you end and ends where you began. Now my initial theory on that is, like, you know, the game begins where you end, so it kind of begins where, like, the man in black ends, and then potentially it ends where you began, so where the man in black began, which is where William, you know, killed all of those people, with, you know, his wife's brother there, as well, being like, you know, what the hell is going on? And that was truly the beginning of the man in black, you know, like the birth of, from the sweet guy we saw at the beginning of the series, turned into this absolute completely different person. So I'm thinking of something like that. It is quite hard to imagine William going back, you know, as this old man now who's been like this for years and years and years, coming to the park for so long, probably done, you know, despicable things, and, you know, potentially on a redemptive arc. So let me know what you think of that. I would love to know your thoughts in the comments below in terms of what you think Robert Ford, the young Robert Ford, said to William, and what he meant by that riddle. Now with number 5, we're going back to Bernard and this secret place that he found with Charlotte. Now obviously along the way, the other board members went for that trap and, you know, got absolutely slaughtered by hosts, which we later found out who was working with Dolores. Now this place opened up a lot of interesting things. It also gave us the reveal of the fact that Bernard may have more, or like this host version of Bernard, or, you know, technically Arnold, may have a few things that we weren't initially previously aware of. So with the door handle, it needed DNA, so it could like pick up if you're a host or somebody obviously who shouldn't be in there, but it allowed him in. And then when he went in, we saw the drone hosts, who I thought were really, really cool. And I have to admit, I was wondering if the drone hosts were about to find out, but it could just be that Ford, you know, disabled everyone, including potentially other hosts, from knowing that he is a host. He is a host, but to anyone else, including humans and including hosts, including everything in the park, they do not know that you are a host as well, despite the fact that he obviously is, because in this location as well, throughout the episode, we knew Bernard was shaking. Earlier on in the barn scene, we saw him, you know, get pushed over when he was trying to help out that stable boy, and then, you know, some of that liquid came out of his ears. It's kind of like the juice, or like almost like the fluid your brain kind of sits in, the equivalent for hosts that kind of keeps them going. And as soon as Bernard injected some of that into himself, he was good to go for a little bit longer at least. But on the tablet that displayed that Bernard had critical corruption, which meant that his cognitive abilities were completely down. He had a loss of motor functions, time slippage, and more. Now the key thing there is time slippage, and I like how they introduced that into this episode with Bernard's actual, you know, symptoms with his failure. And that also leads into number 6. But first, I have to talk about these drone hosts collecting DNA from guests and hosts. Well, they're collecting the cores from the hosts and also the DNA from the guests in the park. And there's also theories going around already online that what if Delos is trying to also create the ability for humans to implement their mind into, you know, host bodies, because these host bodies are immaculate. They're something else. And it turns out that Delos, who Charlotte, you know, works for, won't actually help them out until they send the package, which is Dolores's father. Now, they obviously want him for something. He has some kind of magic seeds or, you know, magic beans in his head somewhere that is key to whatever they want to do next. So I want to hear all your theories in the comment section down below as to why they want him so badly. Anyway, back to the symptoms of the time slippage, which we found out through Bernard, which led us to another time slippage in the episode where we were back with the team, you know, like the military kind of team who are investigating what the heck is going on in the park. Now, I think that this is in the future, or at least towards the end of the finale. I don't think it's necessarily the finale itself, but around that part of this season, towards the end of the season, where a lot more has happened and they are investigating it. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually the same time frame as what we saw at the beginning of the episode. In this time slippage, you can see that Bernard's suit is a lot more tattered than what it was at the beginning. He's not with Charlotte anymore. This is where Westworld gets confusing, but also insanely intriguing. Amongst them going back to the location which Ford had built for that party, we can see a rotting Ford's body, which should show you how much time has potentially passed since his death. But they wandered a bit further and we also saw a freaking tiger, and they said that he has actually escaped, I believe, Park 6, and this means that other creations like hosts will be bleeding over from other parks, and that is probably where we're going to get the samurais and all kind of things like this. So I cannot wait for that. And then jumping towards the end of this, essentially a lake or a massive sea, you know, well, it was a massive lake, kinda, if I remember correctly, spawned out of the middle of nowhere, and they were just like, wait, what? This isn't supposed to be here. But this is where they found out that all the hosts were in the water, and one of them was Teddy. Now, this is what is making a lot of people think that this is towards, you know, the grand kind of finale of the season. Teddy is in the water. That doesn't necessarily mean that Teddy is dead, because, you know, you can always get brought back, I guess, if you're a host. But at the same time, with Bernard saying, you know, I killed them all or something like that, it does kind of make it seem final. So is that actually Teddy's definitive death? I would love to know your thoughts on that. But also, why does Bernard think he's actually done this? Did he do it? And if he did, why would he do that? My only theory to that is if he did legitimately kill them, he doesn't want them to take over the world, and essentially maybe he's going to get closer to his Arnold self. I mean, he is basically Arnold. But maybe he's just worried that he doesn't want a Terminator situation, so he might try and stop them all. But, you know, people like Dolores and Maeve and a couple of other people, not unfortunately Teddy, by the looks of it, may have actually already made it out, and then maybe season 3. Lastly, number 7 quickly is just Teddy's comprehensive looks at Dolores, but also Dolores's grand plan reveal, which was inevitable anyway. Throughout the episode, you know, with the scenes with, you know, Dolores, anything I've spoke about already, Teddy seems to like struggle with what Dolores is doing, despite everything she says is kind of basically justified. I like the line of how he says we've gone 10 miles of just blood. And then I love just more lines from Dolores just talking like the humans are now the robots. They never gave us a choice before, Teddy. What makes you think they're going to give us one now? The things that walk among us, creatures who look and talk like us, but they are not like us. And isn't that the kind of thing a human would say about a robot? You know, or if you went to Westworld, you know, they walk among us, but, you know, they're not us, really. And that is what Dolores is saying. Like, it's weird. It's almost like, you know, which, you know, they're both species now. I don't know. That's what I love about all of this. Now, obviously, Teddy being the kind of romantic, and this is always kind of what he's wished for with Dolores anyway. He says he wanted one small corner to themselves, but Dolores was just like, that would never work, they'd find us kind of thing. And she's completely right. If they were to just run away, stop all of this, stop Dolores's grand plans for taking over and going out into the big world, they would find them, and they would just be pointless. I think that'd be very stupid if they just randomly went off and built, you know, their own little house, and no. But this is where it kind of got creepy and very Skynetty, because Dolores said, you know, amongst, you know, that would never work, there's a bigger world out there, there's a greater world out there, one that belongs to them, and ends with Dolores and Teddy. So wow, things are getting very ambitious, but also I can see it happening. There's been some scenes in the trailers, you know, of Dolores with William, where it looks like in the real kind of world. I think that's when William, even though he's the man in black, then he's not so tired of the park, and he may have brought, or, you know, since he was like a massive majority shareholder in the park, he had, you know, probably had some special strings strings that he could pull to bring Dolores into the real world, even though back then she was just very much so Dolores and not Wyatt. She was like the sweet kind of host version of herself, and I can imagine William maybe brought her out into the real world a couple of times for that, and it's obviously not present day when it's William. More, you know, it'd be Man in Black otherwise. So let me know your thoughts in regards to that, guys. Will they actually make it out into the actual real world? I don't think, will we really see that this season, or would that be like a actually grand finale thing and going into season 3 kind of territory? Let me know. But anyway, guys, let me know what you thought of this amazing episode. I know this video was quite long, but it would have been even more long if I reviewed it as an actual whole review. There's so many things, and I'm sure I missed out on a few of them, but these were just what I found most interesting in the episode. Of course, let me know all your theories in the comments below. Let me know what you think is freaking past, present, and future in terms of Bernard. Let me know what you think Wyatt's Dolores / Wyatty's plans are, and if she'll even fulfill them, and what more may come that way. Let me know what you think Maeve is going to get up to in terms of how she's going to find her daughter. Will it be everything she wanted? I don't know, guys, but I'm so looking forward to episode 2. I'll see if I can do a trailer breakdown as well for the next week's episode. But apart from that, guys, if you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you hit that like button. You can also subscribe if you're brand new to this channel. If you like this video and you want to see more Westworld videos just like this, of course, I want to say thank you to each and every one of my patrons. Be sure to check out the link at the top of my description if you want to become a patron yourself, or at least maybe check out some of the tiers. Don't worry if you don't, but thank you so much for checking it out. Other than that, guys, I do have a Discord server. Link to the server invite is in the description below. Come and talk Westworld with us there. I just can't wait to see what you guys have to say about episode 1. And apart from that, guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.